Welcome back to Introduction to Talmudic Legal Logic. In this lecturette, we start looking at inductive reasoning, and we're looking at one particular type of inductive reasoning, juxtaposition or hekesh. This requires a little introduction on the difference between deductive and inductive reasoning. When you use deduction, you have the general rule already, and you're applying the general rule to a particular case. Induction works in the opposite direction. You imply a general rule from particular examples. Let's take a look. Here's an example of deduction. We know that there is a general scientific rule that water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. We can tell by the temperature of the water for your tea whether it is or is not about to boil. We have taken the original rule and implemented it or applied it to your particular circumstances. Here's another example. We know that all spiders, assuming that they're all healthy, have 8 legs. Tarantulas are a type of spider. We're going to take the general rule that all spiders have legs and apply it to the specific case of tarantulas. Here, by contrast, is how induction works. This morning, I got stuck in traffic. I am therefore concluding that I should head out earlier tomorrow, meaning I have taken my particular case and I'm trying to expand it to say something more general about traffic in the mornings. I'm basically expanding my experience, my anecdotal experience of standing in traffic this morning to what might happen tomorrow or on any other day in which I don't get out of the house early enough. Here's another example. The dogs I met with my kid around the neighborhood were friendly. And from this, I conclude that dogs like children. You can see that dogs liking children is a more general rule. My experience with my kid was specific to what happened to us around our neighborhood. You can also see from this example and from the previous one what is the weakness of inductive reasoning, because the fact that certain cases seem to be suggesting a rule don't necessarily mean that it's going to be true all the time. The rabbis, just like modern folks who apply logics, were aware of the fact that induction is not a particularly strong logical method. And because of that, they tried to justify why they generalized from specific cases into rules. And because of that, there are certain patterns in which they will use inductive reasoning. One type of Talmudic induction is called juxtaposition by proximity, or in Hebrew or in Aramaic, hekesh or hekesha. The scenario that hekesh deals with is a situation in which we have matters A and B appearing in proximity to each other in the biblical text, maybe sometimes even in the same verse. And we know that rule X applies to matter A. Because of the proximity between matters A and B, we assume that the fact that they were brought together in the biblical text is not coincidental. And because of that, rule X, which applies to matter A, is also going to apply to matter B. Here's an example from Tractate Makot, Testimony in Capital Cases. Tractate Makot deals with the question of perjured witnesses or impeachment witnesses. The scenario revolves around the biblical text that you can find in Deuteronomy 17:6. It says that a person shall be put to death only by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. No one shall be put to death on the testimony of a single witness. Just as a side note, I should say that the fact that actual eyewitnesses, plural, are required for conviction would have made conviction extremely unlikely in many cases. But let's get back to business. It's weird that the verse uses the terms 2 or 3, because of course, as we all know, 3 is more than 2. So why would the biblical text go through the trouble of specifying 3? Isn't it obvious that 2 witnesses are the minimum, so any additional witness is just going to strengthen the case, or might even be superfluous if 2 witnesses are sufficient for a conviction? The solution that the Gemara finds is to juxtapose any case that involves 3 witnesses to any case involving 2 witnesses. Basically, the claim here is it's not a coincidence or it's not a fluke that the Bible said 2 or 3. What the Bible meant to do was say that in any case when you're dealing with 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses are just as good and vice versa. In other words, if two witnesses are sufficient for a conviction, of course, three witnesses are also going to be sufficient for a conviction. But the hekesh expands even beyond that. Because take a look. If three witnesses should be treated like three witnesses, this invites the question, what do we do in an impeachment scenario? Here's the thing. The only permissible impeachment method, according to Tractate Makot, involves a situation where two additional witnesses show up and say that the two original witnesses that are testifying for the prosecution are lying because they were with them during the time of the offense and could therefore not have observed the defendant. Okay? So in this impeachment scenario, we have two witnesses, and we know that these two witnesses can be impeached by two witnesses. According to our hekesh, two witnesses can therefore be impeached not just by two witnesses, but also by three witnesses. And also, three witnesses can be impeached by two witnesses or by three witnesses. It's important to note that the situation of three prosecution witnesses being impeached by the testimony of two witnesses wouldn't have been obvious through conventional common sense methods, because you could have argued that a particular factual scenario described by three people is maybe better strengthened or better supported than an alternative scenario supported by two people. But here we're being told, just from the sheer perspective of numbers of witnesses, two witnesses are enough. Anywhere where two witnesses suffice, three witnesses suffice, and vice versa. This is how hekesh works.